Knight takes e4. Well, that's just impossible to handle such impotence. D takes e4. But now black gets square d5 for the knight, and with it leaving e7, the bishop f8 will get some freedom. Looks like the game is going to be simplified soon. The pawn on e4 is lost. The only question is, what will black get for it? The opposite colored bishops, that's what looks to be black's fortune, and that is the fortune that the red arrow is showing. And with opposite colored bishops, even an extra pawn won't help to win. Bishop takes e4. Bishop f2 looks too slow, and that can be proven with the following. Rook c8, rook c1, b6. Knight takes c3. The pawn on c5 must die, but black also has one that will be executed on b7. The game is entering the endgame, in which there is one of two results: white wins or a draw. One execution down, waiting for the second one. I ask the listeners not to believe the computer's evaluations. They are too optimistic for white. Even in our time, the computers underestimate the factor of opposite colored bishops. An important moment. I think that the rook should retreat to b8. The pawn on a6 is not so important. The invasion of the black rook on b2 will be more unpleasant for white. Let's also look at the big picture. White has a number of weak pawns. If he should return the pawn g4, if he could return the pawn g4 to g3, then the king side would indeed be stronger. And in reality, pawns f4 and e5 aren't supported and need the support of the pieces. If possible, there's a possible blow g5 that breaks up white completely. The captain to spend time is diminishing. Radjabov has 41 minutes remaining, Cheparinov has an hour and 5 minutes. Well, that's also a good move. Though after rook b8, white answers rook b1, keeping the black rook in a passive position, and the pawn a6 is under fire. Bishop b7 is the link of the metal chain which is keeping black passive. The second rook will help break up the chains. I like the move f6. The idea is to take the pawn e5 and attack the white's king side with the move bishop d6. White is also connecting the rooks. Amusing but fact. Both sides finish their development only in the ending. That's modern theory for you. Ivan is clearing up the king's side structure. In the future, the black bishop will be able to attack white pawns. For example, if the white king moves to the queen's side, the heavy chains are breaking. Typical for Cheparinov. He's trade intolerant. He's happier with difficult battles. But then again, such organic desires are perfect for such a position. The pawn h5 is a poison trap. After rook takes b1, and this variation, the chains could again grow back together with the move bishop b7. Timur is liquidating all difficulties and vague points. In the variation bishop takes h5, rook a d7, black could have gotten enough activation to save the game as we see here. And here, in the position and down 2 pawns, he could even catch his breath. And soon white's fruits fall from the branches. In the variation, rook hd1, rook takes d1, rook takes d1, h4 looked perspective with the later breakthrough f6. White is dreaming about putting the rook on b2. But white is not okay with that. But then again, he's not okay with trading the rooks either. I think that Ivan came up with that exact plan, bomb the king's side with the move f6. The trade of the rook for the second pawn, as we see right here, seems to be a little bit too much for me. The weakness of the pawn on f7 with the movement of the passed pawns should bring white the victory. Only, of course, if there's no magical save, you know, like some castle that is usually seen in endings with opposite-colored bishops. Timur is moving one of the possible victims of the black bishop to a square that's impossible for it to reach. It looks like a concession to me. But then in the case of f6, it would be necessary to think about the march of the king to g4. White got a wonderful square b5 for the rook, and the black pawn on a5 is weak. By the way, it wasn't necessary to fixate it. That's an important tempo. Wonderfully looks the invasion of the rook onto the freshly baked stock. For example, in the variation right here, white is losing the second pawn, either on f7 or on h4. But then again, that doesn't mean that white will still win. Really? Cheparinov is actually looking to get rid of the rooks. Well, a smart idea. A pleasant move in every aspect, but it's not going to save from the trade of the rooks. I studied the position after c4 and didn't find a way for white to win. Very smartly played. To king c7, Radjabov probably prepared a small blow g6. It really should be called small, and black couldn't count just anything. At this time we get a piece of good news. Yakovenko beat Beng Yu. The myth about the invincibility of the Chinese leader is gone. The bishop can't hold on. The rooks are trading. Capturing the second pawn would have given black a dangerous passed pawn. Here it is, the possible castle. How do you break through that? For now, I don't see anything. It's possible that it's unbreakable. Black's boundaries aren't reachable. This is not even a chance, but just a part of the player's honor. And a draw. The opponents played creatively in the opening. White got a small advantage, but couldn't avoid the drawing tendencies with the opposite-colored bishops. A draw is a common result of qualitative play on both sides. Again, for you, dear listeners, worked Grandmaster GM Shipov. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time.